British Constitution. Join the revolution. Lawful rebellion, our right. The British Constitution. We stand for a future we control. Our heritage lies in free men's souls. We fight to conquer Britain's foes. The British Constitution. The British Constitution.
Hello.
Hello, Roger. It's Jim. How you doing?
Oh, hello, Jim. How are you?
Yeah, very well, thank you. I got you on a little 10 minutes later than planned because I was just playing the TV license clip where a couple of things I wanted to bring up with you before we talk about your lawful bank. And I know you've been involved in the latest court case. We were chatting last week, but I just wanted to get your take on this. There was a TV licence person turning up at the door with a policeman. The policeman was there in case there was a breach of the peace, but as long as the people were peaceful, there should be no need for the police to interfere, because the police, in his own words, said, we're here for criminal matters and TV licences is a civil matter, so by law they shouldn't get involved. And that policeman, once this was explained to him, he didn't get involved. So that was a good copper, right, Roger?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and obviously what's happening now is the police are watching these videos. So the people who are standing up to these, they're not bailiffs, by the way, they're debt collectors, okay? So it's an important distinction. They may be registered as bailiffs at the local court, but they're not acting in the capacity as a bailiff there and then, and this is a very important point. The whole process is different.
This was a TV licence guy. This was a guy who wanted to check a home for to see if a person had a TV. Now, it's interesting because he said, I want to see if I can search your house for a TV, but it's legal to have a TV. It's just illegal, or should we say or should we say against the BBC's, that you need a TV licence to watch live television, but you don't need a television licence to just have a TV in your house. That's correct, isn't it?
That's right. I mean, the pros and cons, I think they've muddied the waters a little bit now, but the bottom line is that they have no right to enter your home, and if you have a contractual issue with the BBC, for example, they're not upholding their charter, which a lot of people believe that's the case, in other words, they're biased, the BBC have themselves admitted they've been biased, and therefore they're in breach of their contract. So, if you are in disagreement with the way the BBC's been behaving, and there's probably 1,001 issues that we could raise, but we won't go there, then you have an absolute lawful right to refuse to pay the license until such times as they've addressed the matters. If you write to the BBC and complain, they won't answer these matters, and I think that's appalling.
It is appalling. My own personal take is don't watch their programming. I don't get involved with it. I'm not going to write to them and say you're not upholding your charter. It'd be like King Canute trying to stop the tide. Of course they're banker-owned propagandists. These are the people that told us there were weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. Would you buy a car from these people? Would you buy a car from known liars? If you had someone that continually lied to you and over again, would you buy a car from them next door? I wouldn't buy a car from them, so I wouldn't do business with them. I just don't want these people in my life, so I choose deliberately not to watch their broadcasts.
Well, people, of course, have got to make their own choice as to whether they want to watch the BBC and if they want to pay the licence fee, but also people have the right to protest if they feel that the BBC is breaking the law. And it would be very nice to be able to think that you could go into a court and put your case to the judge and say, look, this is what I believe, and we had upstanding judges who would rule on the balance of the issues, but they don't. The courts are the problem. The courts themselves will just rubber stamp any claims that are made by utility companies, by councils, and by the BBC. Any institution, you're guaranteed that the courts will rubber stamp it. And I think that's one of the big issues that we are highlighting now is that the courts themselves are fundamentally out of control. They are now pushing through an agenda, a court which is actually not a court, it's an administrative hearing, and in our courts now you actually can't get a common law court hearing, which is completely wrong.
Yep. Speaking of which, there's two court cases you're involved in that I'd like to speak to you about. The first was for our listeners from last year, about your court case from last year where they arrested you without a correct warrant, and then you asked for a copy of the warrant, and it had disappeared. So how is that court case going? Just to keep our listeners updated with that.
Okay. Well, what I'm involved in a couple of court cases, and we're learning about tactics.
Yeah.
And the last one I was in, we asked that the chief constable be brought to the court because of the behaviour of his police officers. Vicarious liability, etc., and this was the first time ever I'd actually brought this claim against any police officers, and the judge went through the tick list. Yes, there's a crime committed. Yes, this has been done. Yes, that's been done. However, I'm not going to rule in your favour because it's vexatious.
Because what?
Vexatious. I was described as, which means I'm just continually going back to the courts and doing this, that, and the other, which is, of course, it's complete nonsense.
Is that legal? Hello, I found you couldn't find that in, let's say, a murder case or something like that. Yes, we've had a crime committed. Yes, we've had that. Yes, but I'm not going to sentence you or put you away for murder because I like you. I think you're all right. You wouldn't get a judge doing that. Is that legal?
I mean, but the courts do not uphold the law. The courts are just now rubber stamping. It's all about money. That's why they've gone to administrative hearings, not the courts. And what a lot of people don't realise is that we actually have a right to withhold our consent to these administrative hearings. But the principle is simply this. If you have a claim against somebody and you can't reach a compromise, you can't reach agreement about what the argument is, then you organise for a referee, and that's what the courts are designed to do, provide a mechanism to avoid violence and so on and so forth. So the judge is a referee. But if you feel that the actual court system is not going to be unbiased or biased against you, for example, if the judge was a Mason and the other party was a Mason, I feel that you'd be very, very just in saying, well, I'm sorry, I somehow think that because they swear an allegiance to each other, I'm going to get a biased hearing. And a lot of people have complained about that. So we have a right to actually say no to the courts. How and the wherefore of how we say no is something that people need to sort of study before they go in. I've certainly done it. I did it in the High Court last week and caused all sorts of trauma in there. And
marvellous. Before we get into that, I just want to get back to that point. He ruled against you because he thought you were vexatious.
Yeah, which complete. What he was saying is, we're right, but we're the authorities, and we're just not going to budge. So
what can you do about that? That is huge. That is a court saying, you know what, you're legally right, Roger, but sod you anyway.
Exactly. That's exactly what they're saying.
How? No, that can't be. It can't be that simple, can it? You can't have just a judge saying, "Yeah, go to hell." You can't. There has to be repercussions to that, haven't you? What
well,
can
there
do
should
about
be,
it?
and there will be, but not at the moment. There are no repercussions to the court system. They are saying, too bad, we're in charge, you don't like it, whatever. That's the position that we've got to, and we have got to do something about that, and that's part of what the British Constitution Group is doing. It's getting into the courts and standing up to these judges. The vexatious argument that they put in front of what they put in front of me, they do it all the time. It's a get out clause for them. What a lot of people don't realise is that there's a memorandum of agreement between the courts and the police, and the memorandum of agreement is that the police will not take any action against the court whatsoever, and the court won't take any action against the police whatsoever. So they ring-fence themselves. It's a license to commit criminal activity if you're a policeman, because you're not going to be, well, when I say a policeman, if you're a senior constable, because they're not going to take action because they know the courts won't act against them, as was proven in this particular case. And even the police themselves don't understand their responsibilities vis-a-vis the courts. And I'll give you a classic example. I complained to a chief inspector locally that the police removed me from my own court case, one of my own court cases, because I was arguing with the judge. Well, it's part of my right to give a robust argument in defence of my position.
Of course it is. Otherwise it turns into a Monty Python sketch. Are you guilty, Roger?
Funny.
No, I'm not. You're guilty of arguing with me now. That's a Monty Python sketch.
Well, let me tell you what the argument was. I asked to cross-examine a witness who had just given witness against me, and he said no. And I said, you can't do that, at which point he indicated to the police behind me to remove me from the court. Now, he called police to the court initially to intimidate me. That didn't work. So the only outcome of this was for him to get rid of me. So I actually laid a complaint with the chief inspector about the fact that these police officers didn't know what they were doing. Because I said, what was my crime? And they said, we don't know. So why are you removing me from my own court hearing? I'm not able to defend myself because the judge told us. I said, your job isn't to do just what the judge is telling you. Yes, it is. And this is the debate I had. And people should listen to this. It's a very, very important point. The police will say their job is that they're in service of the court. That's not right, right? If the court is upholding the law, they are in service of the court because the court is in service of the people. Mm-hmm. But ultimately, the police are in service of the people. Yeah. When the courts are breaking the law, the priority is that the police must serve the people, and they, in fact, should have stood their ground and said, Your Honour, what's he done wrong? We can't remove him. But they don't know what they're doing, and that's the big problem that we've got. You've got this system now where young constables are being brought into the system. They're not being taught about common law. They don't have a clue about our Constitution, about Magna Carta. All they're being told is that they must enforce legislation. But that's not their job. Their job is to uphold the law. It's a very, very big difference. Coming back to the police on the doorstep, and this is very important. A lot of people are putting their necks on the line and standing up to these bailiffs or these debt collectors pretending to be bailiffs. And thank goodness for the internet. Thank goodness for videos, because people are learning the law by virtue of people who are standing up and challenging them. Mm-hmm. And I recommend anybody to have a go at the court. Always be polite, but be assertive, because it's part of our democratic right to challenge the judges, to challenge the courts, to challenge the system. Because if you don't challenge it, that's when it starts going wrong, and that's the problem we've got at the moment. It has gone very, very badly wrong.
Yes, it has. I don't know if you had a chance to see the TV license clip. It basically begins with the TV licensing person, I've got a warrant to enter your property, and this all comes from way of an act, and the people on the doorstep say an act requires this is a statute, and it requires the consent of the governed. It's not a law, and the policeman agrees with them. And yeah, he's a good copper, actually. You should watch the clip. And by the end of it, he's saying, look, this is the people on the doorstep are saying, this is a civil matter, officer. This is not a criminal matter. And your oath states that you uphold common law and get involved in criminal matters and not civil matters. And
promote that man to inspector.
I would, but you sure know he's going to be, after that clip's gone viral, he's going to be getting desk duty. The Bilderberg banking cartel that have taken control of our upper echelons of our political system, that give the orders down to the police. They don't want good people like that working for them. But my point is,
a lot of the policemen are good people, and all right, a lot of them have been trained to a point of ignorance, and they are educating themselves by watching the videos. So we've got to be respectful of the fact that they haven't been trained properly. It's our burden to train them, as opposed to them getting training from their senior officers. A lot of the senior officers have moved on in disgust, quite frankly. I've spoken to a lot of them.
So have I.
Yeah, and I think the point is that the videos are available to them. They're watching the videos. They're asking questions. We've seen online the police talking, and there's 2 police officers at the moment who are being prosecuted, a private criminal prosecution, and they're being prosecuted because they thought they could kick someone's door down without a warrant. They're now behind, or at least they're in the dock. And the one thing that was said on these police chat rooms was, it makes you think about what you're doing. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
So-
great. I think that's not just advice for the police, but advice for every human being on this planet. Have a think about what you're doing.
Yeah, I mean, there's another important thing about one of the things I said some time ago is one of the most important words that you should understand in this language is the word consent. And that word consent is being discussed by the police at the moment. And when you ask a policeman, are we policed by consent? And they will always say yes. You say, well, how is it you get my consent? You draw a blank because they don't understand how it is they get consent. They assume that consent is a general thing, because it's a nonsense. Nobody can consent on my behalf. Only I can consent, and if I can consent, I can therefore withdraw my consent. And of course, that doesn't mean I can go running amok and breaking the law. What it means is I have a right to withdraw from the society if I feel that society has become onerous, oppressive, which it has. So we need to understand the difference between the statutes and the laws.
So these people on the doorstep say that anything that's passed by an act of Parliament requires the consent of the governed. Is that but the policemen seem to think that's accurate. Is that accurate, Roger Hayes?
Absolutely, and it's pretty logical if you think about it. You ask the government, do they govern by consent? Yes, they do. Who makes statutes? The government. You can't actually have a statute that has more authority than its maker. So if the government govern by consent, then all statutes are by consent. Now again, that doesn't mean that you can go running around doing whatever you want, because you are subject to the law. The law, common law, protects your property, and that's the difference. The difference between laws is they protect, statutes control. And therein lies the subtle but very, very distinct difference. One is a controlling tool, statutes, and if you want to be controlled, right, then you can consent to being controlled. But if you don't want to be controlled, then you can actually withdraw your consent. It means you've got to make other arrangements with probably a lot of other things, but that's a very long story for another day.
Is that,
I think the point.
Is that written somewhere in the legal law books that an act of Parliament requires the consent of the governed? Is that written down? Is that a definite fact that you can go and look up?
Well, it has been quoted a number of times. I've never gone to the trouble of delving into ancient law books or whatever to find that definition. I believe it's a definition. I've not seen it myself. But it doesn't matter that it's not in writing, because there is a maxim, and the maxim is that we are governed by consent, and therefore statutes are most definitely by consent. It can be no other way. As I say, you can't have a statute that has more authority than the creator of that statute, and that again is a maxim. So you can be quite sure, quite comfortable with the reality that we are all governed by consent, and statutes made by government are subject to our consent. People can argue what that consent is and how it's achieved, and that, of course, will bring into the argument of the legal fiction.
Yes, I know. I don't want to go down the road of the legal fiction, because one, it's very complicated, and two, I just think it's a little legal game that we don't need to play with these people, because we can just say, we are the people, we are the power. Your little funny laws that you've made in corporations and all things like that. It is very interesting to see how we are all technically employees of a corporate state, but we don't need to go down that road. We the people are in charge, and you are the public servants. You will do as we say. We don't need to play any more games than that, I think.
I think one of the important things is, as we are challenging the high courts, when we feel the high courts are breaking the law, then we have to be on solid ground. And the only way to find out whether you're on solid ground is to challenge the High Court. Now, I was in court on Monday, last Monday, and we put in a 7-page document which informed the High Court that we were challenging the authority of the High Court, and we were challenging the legitimacy of the judge. So we're not messing around, are we? So we're going for the jugular. As a direct consequence of that document, and we were in the court in the afternoon, the security was increased and the police were called. So lots of intimidation as we walked into that court.
Mm-hmm.
What transpired then was that the judge gave me an instruction in the High Court. I refused to comply because I was challenging his legitimacy. He would not answer my questions.
What questions were they?
Well, it was it was about the right of an individual to have a common law advocate in the court, and the right under our Constitution for an individual to have a jury trial before he's put in prison. This guy was the threat was he was going to be put in prison because of a contempt of court issue, which we obviously challenged. And what we're talking about here is corruption in the High Court, and we'd exposed it. We were challenging the judge, and we were saying we will not have a judge deal with this because we're dealing with judicial corruption. We want a jury trial.
Everyone has the right to a jury trial, don't they? I mean, I
Well,
believe
no,
that if someone's
being
convicted...
denied, this is the whole point. And this is being denied because of the consent thing, and I hate to mention it, but also because of the legal fiction thing. So we put the argument in front of the court, but what we also did, when the police arrived, I got a hold of the chief constable there and said, what you need to know, it is my democratic right to challenge the authority of the High Court and for them to uphold their authority, and two, to challenge the legitimacy of the judge. That is my democratic right, and I will be doing that here today. It's going to be very robust, but I'm not going to be unlawful, and I'm not going to be unpeaceful. And this is what happened, right? The judge ran out of the court. He sent a message for the security to remove me. I told the security if they laid a finger on me, I'd sue them. And then the judge asked the police to move in. The police came in, and I said to the police, I'm not moving from this position because I have a right to be here. And the police wouldn't arrest me.
Good
so
for the
in the High
police.
Court, the judge wouldn't come back in, the security wouldn't move me, and the police wouldn't arrest me.
Marvellous, Roger.
And the point I'm making is, who does that tell you who was right and who was wrong?
Absolutely.
It tells you everything. So this is what's going on. We have corrupt judges in the High Court. We have corrupt judges who, when they're being challenged, are refusing to have juries because they know what the juries will find. And that's the corruption that's going on in our High Courts at the moment. It's happening in all the courts.
Did he send a letter back after he'd done a runner into the courtroom saying, I'm not going home now, I'm not going to play with Roger because I find him vexatious, just like my colleague found him vexatious. Roger is a very vexatious human being.
Well, what they do, of course, and this is where they still have the upper hand, which we've got to challenge them on. I had no choice. We couldn't just have a stand-up all day. So I declared that the court had been abandoned, that the hearing was over. I left. The police were polite. The police were doing. Once again, the police were doing their jobs. So we've got to take our hats off to the good guys here.
Yeah.
As soon as we had gone, the judge came out and made a ruling and declared that this gentleman should go to prison for 3 months. Because we realised that was exactly how it was going to go, he was on a plane to Spain. So we now have to take out a criminal prosecution against. Now, when that guy came in that courtroom, and there was no jury, he wasn't a judge, he was an administrator. Yeah, as an administrator, he's not protected by the law if he breaks the law. So we're going to take out a criminal prosecution against that administrator because he's breaking the law.
Brilliant.
He's in defiance of Magna Carta, in defiance of our Constitution. He's in defiance of our rights, and that's the guy that should be in prison.
What's this guy's name? Are you allowed to name him on air?
Judge Pelling.
Judge Pelling?
Or in that particular case,
non-judge Pelling. Yeah, non-judge Pelling. Yeah, Administrator Pelling. Lackey Pelling. Yeah. So that's what's happening. That's the latest on this. So it all ended with the defendant on a plane to Spain. It ended with the police not arresting you. Good hats off to the police officers. And it's ending with this judge acting like a judge, but he wasn't, and you're going to call him up for it and bring criminal charges against him. That's how that story wraps up so far, is it?
That's right. And one of the tactics that we're learning is that when we have a claim against one of the judiciary, we should do it through a third party, because that actually sidesteps the vexatious litigant argument, because you're doing it on behalf. Now, the other key and important thing is that we do have a right as representatives in the courts, but the lawyers have come up with this rule that says that you have no right of audience in the court. Well, that's unlawful, and I'll tell you why it's unlawful, because we're all equal in the eyes of the law, and if a barrister can represent somebody in court, so can I. Because it's just a protection racket, isn't it?
Yes. And
that was one of the issues that the judge said ran out of the court. He said that you have no right of audience, and said, yes, I do. I'm claiming common law jurisdiction, and I'm a common law advocate. And he said, sit down. I said, is that an order or is that a request?
And he replied,
the question, because he can't order me, he can only request me. And if he'd requested me, I'd have said, no, I'm not sitting down until he answers the question.
Yeah. Yeah, well, you obviously bug them because you play the game that they're playing, but you play it better simply because the law really is on your side.
Well,
you're the one in the right.
Had the authority been with the High Court, I'd have been in jail.
Absolutely. So to bring back the first one of the criminal prosecution against it, and they said you were vexatious, is that where it ends, or is there...
No,
how can that end there? That's injustice.
I'm going to use a third party who's going to represent me in the court so that they can't claim vexatious.
Oh, so you're going to...
So that's a tactic we've learned from this process.
So
and I will be charging the administrator that put me in prison without a hearing, without notice, absolutely criminal intent, with perverting the course of justice, unlawful imprisonment, and so on and so forth. I'm going to have his scalp, as they say. So these people need to realise that the law is to protect us. It's not there as a milking cow for their benefit. And I think that the corruption has gone on far too long, and it's now far too entrenched, and that their arrogance is absolutely extreme. So, even if you talk to ordinary, a lot of the legal profession, that they don't actually understand what we're getting on about. We have rights, but they don't seem to understand that. They think that, that their statutes are superior to common law. Because that's how they're being trained these days.
Yeah. These are issues that I'll have to bring up next time I get Martin Underhill on the show. For our listeners who were listening last year, Martin was running as an independent police commissioner, and he won down in Dorset. Very good man. There's these people that we need in the police. So I'd love to have him on the show, and with his permission, put you in touch to see if you can...
Well, what you need to do is of course, deal with that memorandum of association between the police and the court. It should be completely stopped. It's inappropriate because it allows for corruption in the courts and senior police officers.
Yeah. Oh, well, that's an update on the latest of Roger Hayes' court cases. That every time I speak to you, you're involved in another one, as you should be, because you're one of the few people on the front line of the legal system in this country fighting tyranny, which is undoubtedly coming down upon us now. I want to just move to you in other issues. We had this news this week that RBS it's having a lawsuit brought against him because it fraudulently lied about its assets when it was raising money in a rights issue. I remember that. I was a shareholder in Lawyers TSB at the time, watching the rights issue of RBS, seeing how things would go.
Well,
it turns out they lied. Yeah, it turns out the bank. Yeah, they did lie, Roger. Oh, what a surprise! The same people that brought us LIBOR. Yeah, those good, honest guys. So
the interesting thing about this is that LIBOR, right? The bank is being sued. That was a criminal offence.
Yeah, it was.
So when we commit a criminal offence, it's you and I that goes to jail. Oh. But when the bankers commit a criminal offence, their bank pays a fine.
Yeah,
what's that all about? That is one law for them and the other law for us. And if somebody has lied, right, and if somebody has lied to actually
get money, that's fraud.
Get money, it's fraud. So it's not the bank that should be held to account. It's the individual who actually orchestrated the deceit, and he should be in the dock for fraud.
Well, we're going to move on to that. Fred Goodwin is being tried personally, but he's using taxpayers' money to as defence because he's being defended along with the bank. So he, because they said you can't really try Fred Goodwin alone. You've got to try him along with the bank. But when I say try, I don't think you're going to see anyone sent down for this kind of thing, you see. But the point I wanted to make was, when they were found guilty, they paid a fine.
Yeah.
And when I say they, I mean the bank, not Fred personally. I believe that trial's still up in the air. But the only point I'm trying to make on this is the fine was paid by the bank, and the bank is funded by the taxpayers. So the taxpayers effectively gave money to RBS shareholders who were lied to. That was what they found. The bank was fined effectively for lying to its shareholders, and the money was pumped in by the taxpayers. The taxpayer. Well,
I'm annoyed about that because banks don't lie. If the bank is a piece of paper, it's people who lie.
Yes.
And therefore it's fraud. So
yes.
It's another one of these classic situations where the institutions are protected, the individuals in the institutions are protected, and we don't get justice.
Completely. And as a result, the taxpayer has been able to fork out to the RBS for their fraudulent goings on. But my local wing down at the hospital has had to be closed down and moved to a local other hospital in Hastings. And again, we see the bankers who've in charge of the loss-making banks getting their bonuses from taxpayer money. Roger, what do you have to say about that?
Well, I mean, you're referring about these bonuses.
Yeah. Loss-making bankers owned by the taxpayer. RBS and Lloyds are the culprits. They're still paying bonuses out, and they for making losses, and they're still taking. They have taken taxpayers' money.
Yeah, I mean, it's payoff money, really. I think a lot of that's to do with keeping them quiet because these bankers know what's going on, and I think they could embarrass a lot of people in the higher echelons of the bank. Let's cover exactly what is going on with these bonuses, because during the First World War, the government issued its own money, saving the taxpayers a lot of tax because there was no interest. At the moment, the government is actually borrowing through the banks, which it doesn't need to do. So we are paying the banks £50 billion in interest that we do not have to pay them if the government organise it in a different way.
Yes.
That's the bonus that the bankers are getting. They're getting taxpayers' money that they don't need to get or shouldn't be getting if the government rearranges affairs in the proper way. So that's what the bonuses are all about. It's criminal.
Yes, I remember overseas, the Bank of England and the bankers getting their money and all things like that, and the Bank of England having its private shareholders as well that we're not allowed to know about. And of course you look at over the pond, you've got the Federal Reserve, which is a completely admitted private entity run by private shareholders. And there was one president that tried to do away with that with Executive Order 11110, issuing the currency again, like you've just said, from the government itself rather than a private institution. And that, can you guess what president that was?
The one they shot.
That's the one.
It's actually the two they shot, because Abraham Lincoln did exactly the same, the greenback.
Yeah.
He was advised by a banker, and the banker told him that he could issue his own money, greenback, free of interest, because at that time the bankers were trying to charge Abraham Lincoln 33%. At the end of the war, Abraham Lincoln had learned a trick that he could issue his own money. The bankers didn't want that, so they bumped him off. Kennedy was exactly the same. When he was trying to issue his own money, they bumped him off as well. So there's a message in there somewhere. That's probably why the government won't issue our own money, because there's a few people scared of getting bumped off.
So having seen all these good people bumped off for issuing their own money, that's a wonderful link into your lawful bank, Roger.
The lawful bank, which is about issuing our own money, because we can do so.
Got your gravestone yet?
Yeah. Well, I've got my sort of security up here at the moment. So I think the point about the lawful bank, which is very, very different, is not being done by a pyramid scheme. It's being done at community level, which means it's not me or one person. It's literally communities across the United Kingdom. And we are putting together the mechanism, how it will work, explaining why it will work, and at some point in time, hopefully within the next couple of months, we will have our first branch open, which is going to be an internet branch. Mm-hmm. And once that's up and running, the thing will just grow from there. Yep. But, if they bump me off, then there's someone else that has all the information and someone behind him. So it's beyond their control to stop this now. It's now literally in the hands of the people. It's about the power of the people. The power of the people, which is the knowledge and the inclination to actually coordinate our actions. That's what the power of the people is about. And we're hoping that people will, stand with us, give us their support, and this thing will happen. And once we're in control of our own issuance of money, once we're in control of our own money supply, we will actually take control of everything else that's important in our lives, including the courts. Everything's about the money, isn't it?
Yeah, it all comes down to the money. Now, what we're going to do, Roger...
The British Constitution, join the revolution. Lawful rebellion, our right. The British Constitution. We stand for a future we control. Our heritage lies in free men's souls. We fight to conquer Britain's foes. The British Constitution. The British Constitution.